why do we feel like there is a misunderstanding of the impact that individuals can have inside of our organization that have disabilities if the data is so cut and clear about the positive impact that they'll have in the organization?
I think that it is an old-fashioned approach to what business success looks like. I think that it's just a lack of education, a lack of awareness, and that is why Pride is so dedicated to not only creating employment opportunities internally for people with disabilities, but educating employers on how best to do it, how healthily and easily they can do it, and really make a difference in not only the lives of those individuals who are working for them, but in the lives of their customers. And especially now, as we know, and I've heard this on some of your podcasts before, and I appreciate this so much, is that our customers want to know that we are invested in social governance, that we are doing the right thing by our employees. You know, whether it's a good thing or not, HR leaders are the first responders of an organization. We have a hand in the entire employee experience. And with that, we have an awareness of what works well and the pain points. And there's an obligation to all employees, from line staff to C-suite, to use our voices. That is what we are paid to do as HR professionals. And if we are seeing trends within the organization that have the potential to hinder progress, we must call that out and provide those potential solutions. If we don't do that, we're not doing our jobs.
All right, guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the HR Heroes podcast. Today, we're going to be talking to an incredibly special individual, Amy Knight. Amy, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, Keenan. Thank you very much for sharing your time with me today.
You know, I think sharing is really important because in this busy world that we live in today, it's so easy to get caught up in all of the stuff that really doesn't matter. And I like to kind of start off our episodes by asking a human-centric question. So, Amy, how's your heart doing today?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. It is great today. It feels full. It's pumping. It is just ready to go, and it's jazzed. So happy heart today.
Happy heart, happy
Yeah.
heart, happy life. So what are some of the things that kind of get your heart jazzed up? Like what kind of gets you excited?
Honestly, the smiles that I see when I come to work is a big one, truthfully. I love the engagement. I like good music on the way to work. That's something else that will really make my heart happy. And I'm a huge birder. So I'm all over that. You know, I hear a bird and I can identify it with a few little tweets. That does it for me.
Oh, no way. I had another guest on the podcast who actually loved birds.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Jeff Venek. He is actually the VP of Human Resources and a Human Resources leader at the Hogle Zoo in Utah. And he fell in love with birds very early in life. So why did you fall in love with birds, or why did they kind of something that gets your heart singing?
Well, most people had to find something to do during the pandemic, and birds was that for me. And I just immediately became passionate about everything that was coming to my yard when I started working from home a little bit more and spending more time in my patio during off hours where I typically would have been out hiking or experiencing the world. That's really kind of how I got into it. And now I've just embraced it completely. And I find that I have family members and friends coming to me like, what is this bird? What is that bird? And I just enjoy adding to my list on the daily.
Oh, that's so cool. I also fell in love during the pandemic with birds. I was fortunate enough to live in Hawaii from December of 2020 until June of 2022. Because all the remote work was happening, my girlfriend was living there going to grad school. And we moved to the island of Oahu, and we lived right across the park from this gigantic tree. And there were green parakeets by the hundreds who lived in this tree. And every morning they would flock through the neighborhood in this gigantic swarm of birds, and they'd land on the power lines. And I remember sitting in the mornings and kind of just reflecting on how beautiful they were and all the sounds that come from nature. It's a very peaceful experience just to kind of see birds freely kind of singing and running around the world.
Without a doubt. I know I dig it.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that I really want to kind of use this as an opportunity to do is kind of tie our episode together. So our previous guest wanted to ask you a question. So I'll do a little bit of groundwork here. With the landscape of how the world has changed in society and in our personal lives, what societal changes and initiatives do you kind of see when it comes to learning and development, when it comes to supporting our workforce? Are people looking for different things because of how the world has changed? And how do you think those things are changing how we approach kind of learning and development?
The first thing that comes to mind for me, and it's an initiative that we're currently working on, is incorporating inclusive language into all of our training and being more mindful of how we approach that for folks. So I think that the landscape particularly is all about how can we make this more about everybody being truly comfortable in their authentic selves in the space that they're in when it comes to learning and developing, and how do they learn? And making sure that we're really looking at if they're a kinesthetic learner, if they're an audio learner, visual, what that looks like, and incorporating all of that so that it's a more inclusive space for everybody and everyone can get something out of it.
I love that. I feel like that's something that I've really leaned into later in life, is realizing that all of us came from an education system that was kind of, cut and dry. This is how we learn. But I've realized that I'm very much an audio learner. So when I read and consume books, I'm always listening to the audiobook, but I'm also reading at the same time. And I feel like it hits the brain centers a little bit different for me and helps me retain information a little bit better. I wish that was a trick, or at least I wish I had leaders in my life early in life who would have kind of changed up the way that we need to be a little bit more inclusive about how we kind of engage people, especially when it comes to learning, which I feel like is so important.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me. As far as being the type of learner and what's best for me, I think that probably visual learner is best. That's how I tend to retain things and really absorb. But I love hands-on. I love being able to do it. I love being able to hear it. Like, I'm all over the place. So just give it to me. Like, I just want to learn it. Bring it on,
Would you consider yourself a lifelong learner?
100%. And I understand that is true of you as well, correct?
That is correct. 100%.
Yeah. Well, how can we not be? For me, I was always worried about stagnation. I never wanted to become complacent in life. That was always very scary for me. I felt like if I let that happen, that my life would end. So for me, I'm always trying to figure out, okay, what's the new best way? How are other people doing it that's better than I've been doing it up to this point? And what can I take away from that in order to make things better for the individuals that I support, right?
I mean, I think that the attitude of being a lifelong learner is so important because we have so many opportunities to change and morph and become a different version of ourselves. One of my favorite sayings is, what got you here won't get you there. And realizing that we have to continuously adapt and change who we are to be able to meet the needs of our current environment, of our life challenges, of the situation that we can live up to. I feel like it's just such a powerful notion to kind of be that lifelong learner, because there's so much to learn and there's so much to live and so much to experience, which I feel like is so beautiful. I want to give the audience an opportunity to kind of learn a little bit more about your history and kind of how you found yourself as an HR leader here today. So today you're the Regional Human Resources Director for Pride Industries, and you guys have an amazing mission, and I want to kind of dive into that. But before we get into that, talk about your early days of finding your place in HR and some of the early, I would say, rocket ship rides that you went on in business, and kind of how those kind of changed your perspective of, business and the landscape of work and everything.
Oh, it would be my pleasure to share that, Keenan. As far back as I can remember, I wanted to be an elementary school teacher, specifically teaching second grade. Initially, it was because I wanted to be able to write on a chalkboard. And I love doing that every day, but I'm pretty sure that chalkboards don't even exist in the classroom anymore.
I don't think so.
They don't, right? They're gone, unfortunately. But playing school was my favorite game, so much so, in fact, that I would force my little brother to play school with me on the weekends, where he was always the student and I was always the teacher. And I'm pretty sure that is the last thing that he wanted to do on a weekend. But he never failed to accommodate me, bless his little heart. I'm so grateful for that still. But I stuck to that script, and I followed my path of becoming an elementary school teacher until my junior year of college. I had taken almost 10 years off from college between my junior and my senior year to travel across country with a Marine that I had met from the Midwest while I was attending school at California State University, Monterey Bay. And that adventure lasted a handful of years before I ended up back in San Diego. And during that sabbatical, I worked for a local newspaper and a telecommunications company in the business billing department doing like high level customer service. But upon my return to my hometown, I got a job at Knox Attorney Service in the heart of downtown San Diego, where I greeted customers and I answered phones. And it was there that I was approached by one of our customers who was also a resident of the Emerald building, for anyone who knows San Diego. And she said that she was working for a very small up and coming startup company, and it was a .com company, and that she would love for me to come join their team. Now, mind you, this was in the late 90s when the .com phenomenon was fresh and just emerging. It was cutting edge at the time, and it sounded very exciting to me. So I jumped on the chance to be a part of that. And when I got to peoplefirst.com, there were only 30 of us. I was sort of a jack of all trades floater person, where I was assistant to the CFO, and then I also worked in titles as well. And as the company began to grow, I moved from titles to facilities, earning the post of assistant facilities manager. I enjoyed facilities. We had moved into larger offices just down the street, and I got to help decorate, which I thought was a ton of fun. But one day, my boss came to me and she said that the company was growing so fast that it was in need of an HR department, and she wondered if I had ever considered working in human resources. Keenan, I had not. But she went on to say that she thought that I would be good at it and that it would provide more growth for me over time. So with that, I began my career in HR. And in the short time that I was at People First, we were able to grow the company from 30 to over 300 people. And I played an integral role in helping build a very talented and dynamic team at peoplefirst.com. It was a very fast-paced organization. There was a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and it was absolutely intoxicating. When I left San Diego to finish college finally at Purdue, we were in the process of being acquired by Capital One. And it was a huge win and success that I'm very proud to have been a part of. Surprisingly, during that short period of time, I learned that I had a knack for HR. So I kept that in my back pocket. You know, human resources at its core is the art of developing people. And from very early on, I've had a passion for people. And I think that's true for most of us who are in this industry, I would wager. Would you agree?
Oh, I would absolutely agree. It's
Mm-hmm.
human-centric leadership, which gets the most out of our team. Before we kind of keep going here,
Yeah,
we need to pause and reverse a little bit.
sure.
30 to 300 people.
Yeah.
Explosive growth. What was the process like of having to bring on so many team members and kind of being in that fast-paced environment, especially in the early .com days?
It was less than 2 years and it was chaotic.
Wow.
It was constant and chaotic. I recall doing new employee orientations at least twice a week, if not more. It seemed that we were hiring on the daily. We were growing so fast that we were saying to our employees, refer, refer, refer. So friends, whatever, bring them on. We've got to do this. We've got to make this business work. But like I said, the energy was just explosive, and we were so immersed in the success of the organization. We felt that we were all playing such an integral part in that we were willing to work the hours. We were willing to put in the time and the energy to make it happen. And I just remember a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnership, and a lot of fun. You know, to be honest, I haven't had an experience like that since People First.
I could imagine. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that incredible, it's almost like intoxicating, the environment that you're in, new people coming in every day, having them find a spot, kind of rallying the troops behind the mission, and that explosive growth is something that you will always remember. And I feel like not a lot of people get to experience that either.
I don't think so. And I appreciate the fact that so many people who are joining the workforce now are looking for something like that and are doing their part to engage team members to keep that energy flow. So I think maybe it's happening again. To what extent, you know, it's hard to say, but I'm encouraged.
I mean, it's an amazing gift to be able to give the perspective of what those early days were like. I'd like for you to kind of continue on your thought process of, HR leaders in themselves are really people-centric leaders that get the most out of their team. Did you have something else that you wanted to add to that?
Well, I did. I did. I would kind of like to share what happened from there, because
Perfect.
I really did kind of put HR into my back pocket for a moment, and then I picked it up a little bit later. And I think that part of my scholastic journey sort of fed into why and how I did that. So when I arrived back in college, I was still majoring in elementary education, but I had had all of this experience at People First. I had seen life a little bit differently in the time that I took out of school. And I wasn't really confident about going, keeping on that track. And so I told my advisor at college that I wanted to continue on with that major of education, but minor in philosophy, because philosophy had become a newfound interest of mine. And he got this weird spark in his eye. And he said to me, why don't you major in philosophy? That got me thinking, because I had become really fearful about the potential of molding little minds. And I don't know if he kind of got that, but anyway, during that meeting, I decided, okay, yeah, I'm going to change my major to philosophy. And then a short time after that, I discovered that he had also happened to be the chair of the philosophy department. Now, I couldn't decide if I was pissed off about the manipulation or if it was somehow divine intervention, but I stuck with philosophy, and I'm so glad I did, because what I learned from that experience is that philosophy and human resources really relate well to one another. And they do so in that, philosophy is about critical thinking, problem solving, right? Thinking outside of the box. And I'm sure as human resources professionals, we all have stories about those one-off scenarios where we've had to trudge through those things and pull out the problem solving, pull out the creative thinking to get through them. And people are not like numbers. They're fluid, they're fancy, they're messy, and they're masterful. Like all of those things that I found philosophy to be. So while I was in school, I was working as an HR assistant for an auto dealership. And then shortly after I graduated, I was promoted to the HR assistant manager position. But I wanted to go back to California to be closer to my family. So I started looking for HR jobs back home. And I found one. The HR rep case manager position that happened to be in the same town where my dad and brother lived at the time, and I applied. And that is how I found pride, and primarily because I was immediately drawn to its mission of creating employment for people with disabilities. And I thought to myself, now that's not just policies and paper pushing, that's a mission that matters. Right? So I've been at Pride now for over 17 years. When I turned 40, I finally realized that I should probably accept my calling. And I went to obtain my master's degree in human resource management. I knew that I wanted to continue my career and add even greater value, but I needed to learn how to talk the walk, so to speak. And so I've been a regional director for a couple of years now. And, now it's about continuing to grow, right? That constant learning, that constant striving, so that I can, provide value to my organization and beyond in an even greater capacity than I have. So I appreciate the opportunity to kind of share that story, because it, our paths sometimes weave and maneuver, and then sometimes we come back to center, and it may not even be something we expect to do.
I mean, you've been on an amazing ride. One of my favorite sayings is when we're on the right path, the universe has a way of conspiring with us. And it seems like the universe conspired with you to bring you back to Pride Industries in the same town that your brother and your father lived in, which in itself is an amazing gift. So I want to kind of talk about your realization at the age of 40 that you want to say, I should probably listen to my calling. I'm going to go back and get my master's. Why did you feel like that in itself was so important for the long-term success of your career?
Because I didn't know how to think strategically. I'll be really honest with you, Keenan. I understood that in order to really get that seat at the table that we hear so much about, that you have to be able to look at things more broadly, and from that 35,000 feet approach downward, right? And I was, up until that point, I was really just in the thick of it, the
Hmm.
day-to-day stuff. And I wanted to advance my career in a way that I could sit down with our C-suite and say, here are some ideas that I have. What do you think? And I didn't have the confidence to do that until I went to grad school, truth be told.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. A lot of the conversations that I have with leaders like yourself are about the strategic role of HR in the future of business, because it's very difficult for you to be respected at the table with the C-suite of ops, of executives, of product, of people and culture, whatever that could be, if you can't speak the business language. And one of the things that I think we need to recognize, and I think more people are catching on to this, is that HR is the connector between all of these different business departments. If we have an initiative where you want to accomplish something, it's the people who are going to help us get there. And so, do you feel like the space of HR in itself is changing, like you kind of anticipated by going back to get your master's, because we need to be a little bit more strategic in speaking the business language with the people at the table?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. When one pursues further education in their industry, particularly in HR, we get to learn a little bit more about organizational development, compensation, all of these talent acquisition, all of data analytics, all of these things that really play a role in that full employee experience, and being able to set a framework from which to build. Knowing how to speak to how do things truly look, and what is it we need to tie together to get where we want to go, and where are the gaps, right? One thing that I learned is that finance plays a role in human resources, a
Huge.
significant role, yes. But prior to going to grad school, I didn't understand to what extent. I truly didn't. And so that was a big shift for me. And I think I embraced my career even more after I had a better understanding of how significant an impact we play.
One of the things that I think is so beautiful about your story is kind of the dichotomy, if you will, between Pride Industries and People First. PeopleFirst.com organization, explosive growth. Pride Industries, an organization that is rooted in the community and helping people find places for bigger opportunities in life. And so I want to kind of give you an opportunity to talk about the significant role that Pride Industries plays in the community in supporting the people who have disabilities, and what you guys do for these people, so the audience can better understand the pivotal role that you guys are playing.
I don't know if you can tell by my smile, but I am so happy to be able to brag about Pride and to share that story, Keenan. We're a nationwide nonprofit that was established in 1966 with the mission of creating employment for people with disabilities. We're headquartered in Roseville, California, and we operate in 14 states plus Washington, D.C. And we demonstrate a commitment to our mission by being a leading employer of people with disabilities in the United States. Currently, we have approximately about 5,000 employees, and we have a continual goal to have 50% or higher employees with disabilities. So we're very passionate about leading the way for employment opportunities for people with disabilities, and then also showing other employers how to do the same. And you ask about kind of stories and successes, and I have one for you. And that is that, when I first started working for Pride, I was, as I mentioned earlier, an HR rep case manager, and this was around 2007. And shortly after I started here, I recruited and hired an employee with autism for a janitor position at one of our federal custodial contracts. And this was the first job he had ever had. He'd never worked before. And one of the challenges that he faced was that he wasn't sure how to proceed and move on to the next task when he would complete an assignment. So, for example, when he would finish sweeping, he would simply drop the broom and stand in one spot until prompted to do the next task. And his training was extensive, and it took months to complete. His manager was concerned that he was not a good fit for the job. To address that concern, we implemented additional supports like job coaching, prompting, keeping the same routine, and a picture checklist to help him stay on task. And I am ecstatic to say that now, 17 years later, he's living independently. In his free time, he's an avid gamer, and he has 3 cats that he loves and cares for and talks about. And I'm so proud of him. You know, his work hours now are full time. He's working Monday through Friday, full days. And I see him every day after work walk to the bus, and you know, he's ready, he's sitting there waiting to take that bus home, and I'm just filled with pride and appreciation for the example that he has set for me, is what it means to be tenacious and to really do everything that you can do to meet your goals. And I'm just so humbled by it. Like, it just reminds me of what not to take for granted every single day.
Amy, what's better than that? Do you know what I
Nothing.
mean? Like, think
Nothing.
about the experience that you've created for somebody and the opportunity of life that you've created for another individual. But that's just one story of all the thousands of people that you guys have placed over the years. I mean, it's just like incredible to think about.
It is. And you're right. That is just one story. And I do have a lot more. But I think that it encapsulates what we do as an organization every day, and the effort that our employees put in to make it happen as well. Because it's not, you know, it's not just us. You know, that employee had a desire to live independently, to earn that paycheck, to feel good about what he does every day and make that contribution. And sometimes I get up in the morning and I think, oh man, you know, it's going to be another day. It's going to be, but no, I'm reminded at the challenges that our employees face. And I'm like, okay, you know, you need to get over yourself, you know, let's get to work and get it done, because you're doing this for an amazing reason. And it's definitely worthwhile for sure.
And I'm so proud of you for the work that you guys continue to do and showing up every single day. You create so many opportunities for people to live life fully. And if we kind of can take a couple seconds to kind of dive into the data that I mentioned in our last call, one of my long-term partners here in Las Vegas is an organization called the Grant to Gift Autism Center. So when we first started working with the Grant to Gift Autism Center, the president of that organization, a guy named Brian Hager, came in as kind of a case manager, if you will. And when we sit down with the executive director, he said, you know, one day I want to be in Kathy's seat as the executive director, because I realize how important our role is here in the community. Years later, he is now the president of the organization. And the challenges that they're facing here in Southern Nevada is immense. We have a family wait list of about 6,000 plus families who are waiting to get treatment for their children with autism because we don't have access to resources here. But the numbers that are behind kind of that demand are staggering. A couple of years ago, me and Brian hopped on a call and he said, Keenan, you know, the most recent data that we have was 44 children. 1 in 44 children are born with autism. The next year, it was down to 42. Most recently, we went to an event a couple months ago for a fundraiser for the organization. 1 in 36 children are now being born with autism. So more and more people every single day are being born with disabilities, and it's organizations like yours that are putting them in positions to be successful and live independent lives. So how do you kind of think about the growing need for organizations like Pride Industries in our communities to be able to support the future of what our communities look like?
Well, Keenan, you know, I know that you're a statistics enthusiast, and so I'd love to share some data so that you can chow down on it like you do dessert. I'm really excited to kind of talk about where are we today, and what is the need. I'm stoked. I'm so happy. So here's the thing. When it comes to Pride specifically, we've served 4,822 people with disabilities. We've helped place 242 people with disabilities into competitive employment. And specifically, since 2021, our I Am Able Employment Helpline has placed 128 people with disabilities into employment. And there's an estimated gross wages of that of $3 million. We've connected 3,400 plus people with employment, training, government, and community resources. So that's Pride. But let's talk about data overall now, right? Okay, so the U.S. Department of Labor Bureau of Labor Statistics measures disability employment, tracking the employment to population ratio of people with disabilities aged 16 to 64. So that's what they do. And according to the BLS, in 2022, 10.6%, that's about 22 million people, have a disability. So to your point, Keenan, right? Now, the employment to population ratio of people with disabilities is only about 35% compared to those without disabilities, which hovers around 75%.
Big
That's
gap.
a big, huge gap. Now, the American with Disabilities Act requires businesses with 15 or more employees to provide reasonable accommodations for physical or mental limitations of a qualified individual with a disability, if the employer is aware of it, right, or have become aware. And I won't get into the nitty-gritty there. But the perceived cost of accommodation offer deters companies from hiring people with disabilities. But I'd like to talk about the reality of that. Okay, according to the Job Accommodation Network, otherwise referred to as JAN, they've surveyed employees recently and shared that 56% of employers said accommodations cost nothing at all. Now, 37% of employers report a median one-time cost of $300, drop in the bucket. And only 7% reported ongoing accommodation cost of $1,925 annually, which I think is still a drop in the bucket considering what I'm about to share. And that is that studies show that businesses benefit from employing people with disabilities. So a 2018 Accenture study of companies that actively employ and support people with disabilities found that these companies enjoy 28% more revenue, 2 times more net income, and 30% more economic profit. Now let's jump to 2023, just last year. So an update from Accenture found that there is a business case for hiring people with disabilities, and that it's become even stronger. So compared to peer organizations, companies that actively employ and support people with disabilities now achieve 1.6 times more revenue, 2.6 times more net income, and 2 times more economic profit. And then the National Institutes of Health review of 6,176 studies found that businesses benefit from employing people with disabilities, and those include improvements in profitability and competitive advantage. Mic drop.
Exactly what more do we need? Seriously. Oh my goodness. Some of those statistics that you're sharing there are jaw-dropping. They are a mic drop moment. So why do you feel like, let's talk about kind of the stigma that comes along with hiring people with disabilities, because this is something that I'm sure you deal with all the time. Why do we feel like there is a misunderstanding of the impact that individuals can have inside of our organization that have disabilities if the data is so cut and clear about the positive impact that they'll have in the organization?
I think that it is an old-fashioned approach to what business success looks like, truly. And I think that it's just a lack of education, a lack of awareness, and that is why Pride is so dedicated to not only creating employment opportunities internally for people with disabilities, but educating employers on how best to do it, how healthily and easily they can do it, and really make a difference in not only the lives of those individuals who are working for them, but in the lives of their customers. And especially now, as we know, and I've heard this on some of your podcasts before, and I appreciate this so much, is that our customers want to know that we are invested in social governance, that we are doing the right thing by our employees. And they're not going to invest in a company that doesn't share their values. And so I think for that reason alone, employers need to get with the program, quite frankly.
I mean, I could not agree more. I was thinking the blend that we have between our personal lives and what we expect out of the brands that we purchase things from, commodities, items, services, whatever that is, we expect them to be a humanistic reflection of what we anticipate in the world. And although the world seems to be more divisive than ever, there is still an overemphasis that I continue to intuitively pick up on, which is we want the human connection and the human experience to translate into the business world that we all live in. And so it makes perfect sense to have and understanding that social governance and social justification is something that our people experience and anticipate today when they want to work with the brand or engage with you as a business leader or an organization. It's just like such an interesting time where it seems like the pendulum is swinging back towards humanity, if you will, especially in this time of like AI and technology and everything else that's kind of popping up around us.
You're absolutely right. And I'm so grateful for, millennials, Gen Zs, calling us to task, if you will. Because
I mean, I couldn't agree more.
I'm all over it. I'm excited.
And do you feel like that next generation is something that is, like you said, calling us to task and doing justification for what we should be experiencing in work and in life?
Oh, without a doubt. And you know what's cool is that they're doing it with dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks to some of the folks that kind of are in it to win it financially. They're settled in their ways. They think this works. Why try something new? I think it's absolutely fabulous that the customer is saying, we're going to force you to, or you're out of business. It's just, yeah. I mean, I know I'm oversimplifying. I know I truly am, but let's be honest, that's really what we're contending with. And I think that because of Pride's mission of creating jobs with disabilities for people with disabilities, it's been really hard for a long time to kind of encourage other employers to get on board for those reasons of fear and stigma and all of those things. But now I think they're seeing that it's not just about doing the right thing, but it can also increase their revenue. I mean, truly, right?
Yeah.
Where most of the time it should be just about doing the right thing, but let's call it what it is. I mean, often that's not what drives, that may not be what drives business in all cases.
It's so refreshing to have this conversation because I can intuitively pick up on the passion that you have for what you do. And it seems like you are so lucky to be passionate about such an important space in our community. And I want to kind of use this as an opportunity to kind of talk about the core values as an example that Pride Industries has. So let's kind of talk about what are some of the core values and then how do you continue to embody them in kind of like the day to day, if that makes sense.
Our core values is absolutely one of my favorite topics of all time. And I'm really excited to share with you kind of what we've done as an organization. So Pride has taken a very thoughtful and holistic approach to determining what our core values are. And what we did is we took a very diverse, cross-sectional, nationwide team, and they were kind of carefully selected, but it was not kind of one of those things that was done in a vacuum through HR, if you will, or anything like that. And we had these folks meet over several months, multiple working sessions, to narrow down Pride's core values to four, which are integrity, namely that we do the right thing, that we earn the trust of our teammates, our customers, and our partners every day with transparency, accountability, and respect. Teamwork, so we work together and we actively seek to include everyone's ideas, and we make sure that those efforts are, very inclusive to achieve our goals. We've got tenacity, we won't give up. We help each other, remove obstacles and adapt, and we turn challenges into growth opportunities, and then finally innovation. So we're continuously looking for new ways to improve ourselves and our services. And when we find that something can be improved, we act on it. And much of our behavior emerges out of our values. And in the book, Making Work Human by Eric Mosley and Derek Irvine, they so eloquently call out that purpose and values are not just words that we repeat. In great organizations, they are a living presence that guides behavior moment by moment. And I love that quote so much because organizations can then take it a step further by weaving their core values into their recognition programs. And Mosley and Irvine go on to say that by not doing so, it's like they have a ship with no navigation. It's aimless and it's off course. So after seeing how positively impactful implementing core values can be throughout Pride, throughout the organization where I work, I absolutely agree with them. I think just if you have an organization without core values and it's not aligning with the culture and what the employees kind of see as that commonality that keeps them doing what they're doing every day, then you're just a ship without navigation. Like, I just love that. But yeah, we do a really good job of implementing our core values into our daily operations, and I could go on and on about it if you want me to.
No, I mean, one of the things that we talked about was my personal anecdote about core values and how
uh,
important they are, because
yeah,
organizations will go rule heavy, if you will, and say that's against the rule, that's not that rule. But if you have core values as your navigation system, there's no real need for those rules. And it seems like a better way to be able to help an organization govern itself when everybody understands the rules or the core values, if you will. I mean, one of the things that you talked about there was um, teamwork was one of your core values, correct?
correct.
Teamwork. When I think
Mm-hmm.
about the overarching umbrella of that, being able to lean into my team members, being able to ask for opinions, get different perspectives, being able to bring people in to get their unique understanding of the challenges that we're facing is an overarching rule that plays in so many different directions. And so I just love the ability to kind of integrate the core values into kind of how you govern your organization. And when everybody understands them, it seems like you have a North Star a lot of the times that you can start navigating towards, instead of like a navigation system that says turn left, turn right, and all that kind of stuff, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I see that in the core value of integrity, doing the
Mhm.
right thing even when no one's watching. That truly is what allows people to govern themselves. And I think that's what drives and inspires some of those roles that we're kind of forced to have as organizations. I hear what you're saying and how lovely it would be if we didn't need those rules, but it's nice to know that the rules are based in something that the employees can stand behind.
I totally agree. I want to kind of use our last couple minutes here as we start to land the plane to get your perspective on the future of HR, specifically kind of the importance of HR leaders being able to use their voice to drive towards organizational success.
Absolutely. Whether it's a good thing or not, HR leaders are the first responders of an organization. We have a hand in the entire employee experience. And with that, we have an awareness of what works well and the pain points. And there's an obligation to all employees, from line staff to C suite, to use our voices. That is what we are paid to do as HR professionals. And if we are seeing trends within the organization that have the potential to hinder progress, we must call that out and provide those potential solutions. If we don't do that, we're not doing our jobs.
I've heard a couple other leaders say that HR almost acts as the conscience or the spirit of the organization in helping them kind of navigate, going back to that kind of analogy of the navigation system,
Mm-hmm.
being the voice of truth, being able to have understanding from that 35,000-foot view that we talked about a little bit earlier is so important, especially kind of as we navigate towards the future. Are there any type of challenges that you see across the landscape of HR that we should be aware of as we kind of move into the future? Is it maybe like technology and our overdependence on it? Is it kind of our loss of the humanistic nature? What are some of the obstacles that you hope we kind of evolve or avoid over the next couple of years here?
Well, I can only speak from my experience in the organization that I'm in. But one thing that I've noticed is that oftentimes it's difficult to get technology to do everything that you need it to streamline your operation. One thing that I love about Pride is that we dabble in so many things so that we can really meet our employees in their journey where they want to be. So what I mean by that is, we're in manufacturing and logistics, and we're in, supply chain, and we're in all these different things. And a previous CEO of ours, Mike Ziegler, he called us a complex carbohydrate, and it's very difficult to get technology to match working in all these different states, having all these different kinds of contracts, and doing it in a way that we are not confined to how that system works. That is very, very difficult for an organization when operations have big ideas and they want to do something, and we say, well, our system just won't allow us to do it. We do not want that. We do not want that kind of chain to keep us from moving in a direction of growth. So yeah, I would say technology is a big one. It's a big hurdle that we need to overcome. But I think we're getting there. And I think if we're savvy about it, maybe hopefully we can pick and choose and tie some together so that it works.
Well, I love that. Well, once again, Amy, I just want to say I am so happy to be able to sit across this virtual table from you and have this conversation, because I can tell how much passion you have for serving your community, and the mission behind Pride Industries is something that I feel like is absolutely phenomenal. And you did an amazing job being able to articulate the passion that you have for the organization, the impact that you guys have in your community, and all the things that you're doing for so many people just beyond the lives that you guys touch. And I just want to say, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Seriously, this has been an absolute blast.
It has been a blast for me as well. And I just want to say how much I appreciate you and all that you do in the mental health space that you're in. I've taken the time to get to know a lot about you and Francis, and I'm so grateful to have the ability to listen to HR folks in this space and get tips and tricks and tidbits, and know that I'm not the only one out here who's struggling with some of this stuff. So I appreciate you, Keenan. Thank you for this forum.
You are the true definition of an HR hero. That's what I'll say. You know, the definition of it. And I just want to say once again, seriously, for everybody who's listening and watching today, I need you guys to go check out Pride Industries, the impact that they're having in their community, but all the other organizations that look, feel, and touch just like you guys in the communities, I feel like are so important to be able to kind of support as we move into the future. Because of the statistics that we shared here today, there's obviously a reason why all of those things are so much more valuable than I think we really give credit for. And so once again, Amy, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Keenan.